You haven't been in one of my classes in a long time, have you, Janet? Been a while. Years, decades. Okay. Well, we'll plow into the next chapter of Isaiah. We're moving along pretty good, aren't we, Doug? Yeah. Skipping along. Okay. Judgment on Egypt. Remember we had judgment on different parts of the world and parts of the countries that are right there in the world. You know, Aram, Israel, all those different areas. Well, this is judgment on Egypt. Yeah. Yeah. So, he goes through a successive parts of these. Egypt holds a special place in the heart of the Jews because of the 400 plus years they were in captivity there. So, Isaiah spends 2 chapters talking about judgment on Egypt. So we're going to go into chapter 19 first. The oracle concerning Egypt. So it's pretty easy to figure out it's Egypt. First verse says it's Egypt. Behold, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud and is about to come to Egypt. The idols of Egypt will tremble at his presence, and the heart of the Egyptians will melt within them. So I will incite Egyptians against Egyptians, and they will fight each other, his brother against his neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. Then the spirit of the Egyptians will be demoralized within them, and it will confound their strategy. So they will resort to idols and ghosts of the dead, and to mediums and to spiritualists. Moreover, I deliver the Egyptians into the hand of a cruel master, and a mighty king will rule over them, declares the Lord God of hosts. So, where's other places where God incited the people, the cohesive group within a group, to fight amongst themselves and kill each other and defeat an enemy of Israel? Gideon. With the Midianites. Yep, that's in Judges. And he incited them, and they ended up fighting each other and killing each other off. Anyone else think of where they kind of did that? There was 2 of them I pulled out. I'm trying to remember what the second one was. Which one?
Jonathan.
Yeah, there was some of that with Jonathan and the Philistines. There's also with Jehoshaphat. Remember the Midianites, the Amorites, and the Meunites. They were making war, and the Amorites and the Midianites destroyed the Meunites, and then when they got done with that, then they destroyed each other. And they were marching to take Israel on and destroy them. So this isn't the first time that this would have happened. It would have been something that God's done before to deliver his people from his enemies. So who's going to be the mighty king that will rule over the Egyptians that Isaiah is referring to here? What country would he come from? Remember, God's using kings and kingdoms to do his will in conquering people.
I know from last week that the Ethiopians take over Egypt, but I don't know if that's the one he looked at.
Yeah, the Ethiopians, I think, later, possibly. This is the Assyrian kings that are eyeing Egypt. Remember, Assyria started out north of Aram, which is north of Israel. It's in, would it be southern Turkey? Or would it be, no, it'd be in Syria. So it started in Syria, and then it spread out to the east, a little bit to the west, and to the south. Didn't go north very much, but it spread out. And this is the Assyrian kingdom, and God's using the Assyrian kings to humble people. Moving on. The waters from the sea will dry up, and the river will be parched and dry. The canals will emit a stench. The streams of Egypt will thin out and dry up. The reeds and the rushes will rot away. The bulrushes by the Nile, by the edge of the Nile, and all the sown fields of the Nile will become dry, will be driven away and be no more. The fishermen will lament, and all those who cast a line into the Nile will mourn. And those who spread nets on the waters will pine away. Moreover, the manufacturer of linen made from the combined flax and the weavers of white cloth will be utterly dejected. The pillars of Egypt will be crushed, and all the hired laborers will be grieved in soul. So what's it going to be like after the onslaught of the Assyrians? Not good. That's a good way to put it. Why would the canal stench? Yep, you've got bodies that are going to be in some of the canals and everything like that. You've got the fish that, because the water's been so fouled because of the war, the fish aren't there. So it's the people who survive. It's a land that's been decimated, absolutely decimated. And I think that's the point that Isaiah is trying to make here. Goes on to say, the princes of Zoan are mere fools. The advice of Pharaoh's wisest advisors have become stupid. How can men say to Pharaoh, I am the son of the wise, a son of the ancient kings? Well then, where are your wise men? Please let them tell you, and let them understand what the Lord of hosts has purposed against Egypt. The princes of Zoan have acted foolishly. The princes of Memphis are deluded. Those who are the cornerstone of their tribes have led Egypt astray. The Lord has mixed within her a spirit of distortion. They have led Egypt astray in all it does. As a drunken man staggers in his vomit, there will be no work for Egypt. What its head or tail, its palm branch or bulrush may do. So what do you think the Egyptians were thinking when the Assyrians were sweeping out? What were they advising the top people, the advisors that were out there, the princes? We're mighty Egypt. We've never been conquered. Listen to me, king. Listen to me, Pharaoh. Okay? They can't beat us. They can't do it to us. We've got our gods. And that's important to think. They've got their gods. They had all those gods that they worshiped, right? What do you depend on for the gods? Protection. Okay? So this is going to have a profound effect on the people in Egypt. Because those gods, matter of fact, that's what happens with everybody who gets conquered, by saying, but I had my God. My God didn't protect me from the Syrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks. All that goes into it as far as what happens to the collapse of a civilization. Huh?
They were worshiping idols.
They had a lot of idols. They had all the idols. One of the big idols was the Nile, wasn't it? That they looked on, the crocodile god that was in the Nile. And so you had all these things that came together for these people to say, what's going on? They are so arrogant that they've never been conquered like that. They're not worried. I mean, this is the mighty Assyrian Empire, but it's not really the mighty Assyrian Empire. Where's the threat coming from? It's coming from God. He's using the Assyrians, but this is from God. And they can't stand against it. So they missed it. They missed where really the threat was from. It was threat because of their arrogance, because of their idols, because of everything that they did. And it's going to come back to them. So, goes on. In that day, the Egyptians will be like women, and they will tremble and be in dread because of the waving of the hand of the Lord of hosts, which he is going to wave over them. So again, Isaiah is saying it's not really the Assyrians, it's God that's using the Assyrians. The land of Judah will become a terror to Egypt. Everyone to whom it is mentioned will be in dread of it because of the purpose of the Lord of hosts, which he is proposing against them. In that day, 5 cities in the land of Egypt will be speaking the lands of Canaan and swearing allegiance to the Lord of hosts, One will be called the city of destruction. So what do you think was the mindset of the Egyptians prior to being conquered? I think I already talked about that. It was pretty arrogant. Nobody can conquer us. Our gods are there. Our gods have protected us for centuries. They'll protect us from everything else. But what will draw the Egyptians to God, and how's that going to happen? What does it mean speaking the language of Canaan? Where's Canaan? Judah. They're going to be speaking the language of Judah in Egypt. Why? And what effect is that going to have?
It sounds like it's going to be completely just overwhelming. They're going to tremble. They're going to be dread. Their warriors turn into women is basically what it says. And all that's going to happen, the terror, all you can do is surrender.
All you can do is surrender, but it's a master reset for the way these people think. Okay? They said, we have all these gods. These gods will protect us. Well, they got steamrolled. And then they figure out, oh, the God of heaven was behind it all. Well, that God is a powerful God. We need to turn to that God. And they wanted to learn more about that God. Well, if you learn more about it, who you got to talk to? People who know about that God. You got to speak their language to find out more about what's going on. So you can kind of see the effect that God wanted is exactly what's happening. He wanted to turn those people away from their arrogance to make them humble. He wanted to turn them away from their gods to recognize the only true God. In that day there will be an altar of the Lord, to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar to the Lord near its border. It will become a sign and a witness to the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they will cry to the Lord because of oppressors, and he will send them a Savior and a champion, and he will deliver them. So we more times understand this one, but I learned something about this one when I did my studying. This is where it's going to be. Right here where this red here is where Heliopolis is. And that's that red dot. That's where the altar of the Lord is going to be, which is kind of interesting verbiage that they put in there. I was not aware of that, but this is a result of what was going on with the Egyptians going up and talking to the Jews in Canaan and coming back and like that, and the oppression that was going to start due to the different kingdoms that were warring and the fact that Jerusalem and Judah were under threat, and they wanted to be able to worship God. So, Onias, he built a temple. It was during the Hellenistic period, would have been the Greek period, the Roman period, for Jewish worship in Egypt. And as a replica, you can read what's there. The location is given by Josephus as being in the district of Heliopolis, where it was built over an earlier ruined temple of Bubastis, the lioness goddess, in the area's other name, Leotopolis. So Leo would be lion, so you kind of see how it fits. It was established for the worship of the God Most High, as that at Jerusalem, in the Antiquities is a reference to Josephus. The location is presumed to be I'll say the rest, the Mound of the Jewish, the name serving as a clue to its identity. So they built an exact replica of the temple in Jerusalem, in Egypt, because there was a threat to the temple and the worship to people if they went to Jerusalem. I didn't know about that. I went on a little bit more. This is out of Josephus itself. Now the son of the high priest Onias, who had the same name as his father, had fled to King Ptolemy, surnamed Philometor, was living in Alexandria, as we had said before. And Alexandria is up in the northern part of Egypt, right near the Mediterranean. And seeing that Judea was being ravaged by the Macedonians and their kings. Now, who are the Macedonians and their kings? What civilization was that? It's the Greeks. Okay? That's the Greeks. This would have been probably in the Seleucid Empire, part of it. Remember, you had Alexander the Great conquered the world in what, 3 years? And then died. Then they split it up amongst his 4 generals. The Ptolemies, because it's King Ptolemy, so the Ptolemies were in the south. The north, and the largest of the empires, was the Seleucid Empire. And remember, there was a lot of friction going on between the Antiochuses and the Jews. And that was what was going on that Onias saw. So we'll go ahead and continue. And desiring to acquire himself eternal fame and glory, he determined to send to the king Ptolemy and Queen Cleopatra and request to them authority to build the temple in Egypt similar to that of Jerusalem, and appoint Levites and priests of his own race. In this desire, he was encouraged chiefly by the words of the prophet Isaiah, who had lived more than 600 years before and had foretold that a temple to the Most High God would be built in Egypt. And that's the Isaiah 19:19 that we're looking at right now. So Josephus referred back to this particular chapter in Isaiah when he wrote his history. And if you don't have a book of Josephus, there's a large section about the antiquities of the Jews that go through and talk back about how history was fulfilled. And this is a particular one here. Being therefore excited by these works, Onias wrote the following letter to Ptolemy and Cleopatra. Many and great are the services which I rendered to you in the course of the war with the help of God. When I was in Chaol, Syria, and Phoenicia, and when I came with the Jews to Leontopolis, in the name of Heliopolis, and to other places where our nation is settled. So he wrote this letter to go ahead and build this temple on the site of an old temple that was ruined, totally destroyed. And I found that most of the temples, contrary to what is proper, and for that reason they're all disposed towards one another, as it is also the case with the Egyptians, because of the multitude of their temples and varying opinions in the forms of worship. So here's some of these temples that are all over Egypt that have just fallen in total disarray because they didn't protect them from the Assyrians. So they abandoned the temples. They abandoned the worship, and it's all broken down and like that. And everything's gone into disrepair. I have found the most suitable place in the fortress called, at this particular one, Bubastis of the fields, which abounds in the various kinds of trees and full of sacred animals. So you had the trees to go ahead and build it. You had animals for sacrifice. Wherefore I begged you to permit me to cleanse this temple, which belongs to no one and is in ruins, and to build the temple most high in the likeness that of Jerusalem with the same dimensions. And that's a big temple, like 90 feet high, 90 feet deep, 45 feet wide. On behalf of you and your wife and your children, so he goes on to say in here, so Josephus writes about it in detail, about what had happened. So here you have confirmation in a Roman time, confirming what happened in latter Egyptian time that Isaiah had several hundred years before prophesied. So you have a full-up temple, just like the one in Jerusalem, built in Egypt. I didn't know that. Back to Isaiah. Thus the Lord will make himself known to Egypt, and the Egyptians will know the Lord in that day. So now you've got Jewish worship centered in Jerusalem and in Egypt. They will even worship with the sacrifice and offering. They will make a vow to the Lord and perform it. The Lord will strike Egypt, striking but healing, so that they will return to the Lord, and he will respond to them and will heal them. In that day there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrians will come into Egypt, and the Egyptians into Assyria, and the Egyptians will worship with the Assyrians. In that day Israel will be the third party with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing in the midst of the earth, whom the Lord of hosts has blessed, saying, Blessed is Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, my inheritance. So what do you think, what kingdoms do you think there would be peace? There's going to be a highway from Egypt to Assyria, and Israel's right in the middle. Where's that highway going to be? The hint is a kingdom that's friendly to God's people. Assyria is north of Israel, Egypt's south, and they're going to be traveling back and forth. Can you think of a kingdom that was friendly to God's people? Were the Assyrians friendly? No. It's the Persians. It's the Mede-Persians. They established that peace, and they were friendly. And I'm going to get into that maybe this morning to talk more about it. So it was down in the Persian Empire. So you had to go from the Assyrian Empire to the Babylonian Empire to get to the Persian Empire before it really got friendly. It's chapter 20, continuing the judgment of Egypt. So all in 19 was about Egypt, and 20 then does kind of a review back to Egypt. So the year that the commander came to Ashdod, when Sargon, the king of Assyria, sent him and he fought against Ashdod and captured it, at that time the Lord spoke through Isaiah to the son of Amos, saying, "Go and loosen the sackcloth from your hips and take your shoes off your feet." And he did so, going naked and barefoot. So who is the Assyrian king who attacked Ashdod? It's right there. Sargon. Where is Ashdod? I didn't know either. If you look where that red is, on that line right there, there's Jerusalem right there. So Ashdod is in Judea. So what he's saying is, this is the year, did I say it here? Yeah. This is the year when Isaiah made the prophecy. This isn't the year when it happened in Egypt. This is when, and so he makes it where there's a coincidental time. So you can tag it to Sargon so you know when it occurred as far as the prophecy. But the prophecy occurred 50 to 100 years later after Isaiah made that. Why did he go naked and barefoot? Let's read the next part. And the Lord said, "Even as my servant Isaiah has gone naked and barefoot 3 years as a sign and a token against Egypt and Cush, so the king of Assyria will lead away captives of Egypt and the exiles of Cush, young and old, naked and barefoot, with buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. They would be dismayed and ashamed because of Cush, their hope, and Egypt will boast. So the inhabitants of this coastland will say in that day, 'Behold, such is our hope, that we fled for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria. And we, how shall we escape?'" So 20 is kind of being a reflection back to what he just talked about in 19, how they're going to be basically taken and basically destroyed as a nation. So why do you go naked? To say, this is exactly going to happen to you as a nation. It was an indication to say, look at him. That's what's going to happen to all these people in Egypt. They're going to be humbled. This was a humbling experience for the people of Egypt. Why were they conquered? They were idolatrous. They were arrogant. They rejected God. They rejected God's people. And that's why they were conquered. So here we have the different things. Now, when he made the prophecy, here's Sargon. Sargon's here from 722 to 705. And here's the area Sargon captured here, and Ashdod's right over here in this area. Sennacherib then, in different parts of that we study, he went down south and conquered in Judea more. Then you have some conquering going on over here. Does anybody know what this particular area is here in blue in our present day countries? It's Persia. It's Iran. So he conquered that area. And then the next one is Esarhaddon. And he conquered northern Egypt. this area. And then you have Ashurbanipal, if that's how you say it right. And then he conquered the rest away, all the way down into Cush. So they make the prophecy during Sargon, which is, let's say it's 705. And then you've got 669 to 658. So you've got all the way down here in this particular area before it actually occurs. What Isaiah is prophesying during Sargon. I'll use this map a lot for Isaiah, it turns out. So, the fall of Babylon. So he's gone through Egypt. Now he's going to talk about the fall of Babylon. So now what's he done? Where's he gone in time? Just talked about the fall of Egypt. Did he go back in time? Did he go forward in time? Went forward. He went way forward in time. And that's you kind of hold on to your seat when you're studying Isaiah, because he moves all over the place. Sometimes he moves forward in time, sometimes he moves backward in time, and you just need to make sure you're grounded into who and where he's talking about, whatever civilization it is and whatever prophecy it is. Right now, he seems to be talking about kingdoms and the falls of kingdoms and the humbling of kingdoms in this particular part of Isaiah. In other parts of Isaiah, it's about the coming of Christ. In other parts of Isaiah, it's about the fall of Jerusalem. And there's two falls of Jerusalem. The first fall is underneath Nebuchadnezzar. The second fall is underneath, I think it's Vitellius, and I can't remember the other one, but the Roman general. So you have two destructions of Jerusalem. It talks about both of them. It talks about the destruction of creation also. It talks about the coming of Christ. So all that's wrapped up in the book of Isaiah. But right now, he seems to be on a roll, stuck on the destruction of different kingdoms and the humbling of those kingdoms. So this is about Babylon. The oracle concerning the wilderness of the sea and windstorms of the Negev sweep on. And Negev is in Israel. It comes from the wilderness, from a terrifying land. A harsh vision has been shown to me. The treacherous one still deals treacherously, and the destroyer still destroys. Go up, Elam, lay siege. Media, I have made an end of all the groaning she has caused. So it's talking about a kingdom, but it doesn't say what the kingdom is at this particular point. But it does mention two places. So who do you think the treacherous one is, the destroyer? The Medes and Persians are the ones that are going to take them over, but the destroyer, how did the Babylons do? How was the Babylonian kingdom? How were they? What were they like? Were they friendly? No. They destroyed. Did Nebuchadnezzar recognize God? Eventually. Okay. And he did recognize God. Now you're down to actually his grandson towards the end of the Babylonian kingdom. What had happened? They really originally recognized God. Even Nebuchadnezzar even recognized God, and had everybody recognize the true God. I don't know whether he actually worshiped that God, but he recognized God. Now you got the grandson that says, that's the treachery. I've turned my back on you. That's the treachery. Where's Elam? It's where the Elamites live? No. Moab is real close to Judah. There's another map. I got a lot of maps. Right here, this is the Persian Gulf, right here. And this is right here is where Elam is. Here's Babylon, right here to just a little bit to the west in Iraq, current day Iraq. And Elam is right here in Iran. And just north of Elam is where Media is. So when he's talking about this, Elam is Persia, and of course Media is Media. It's where the Medes came from. So you have the Mede Empire that's going to take Babylon. So if you know, part of this is unlocking this. He's speaking in terms as far as cities and like that. You need to make sure you have the area right so you can understand what in the world he's talking about. So there's a lot of history if you have to look at this in geography. So you learned some geography this morning, you learned some history this morning. For this reason, my loins are full of anguish. Pains have seized me like the pains of a woman in labor. I am so bewildered, I cannot hear. So terrified, I cannot see. My mind reels, horror overwhelms me. The twilight I longed for has been turned for me into trembling. They set the table, they spread the cloth, they eat, they drink. Rise up, captains, oil the shields. What's causing Isaiah to be full of anguish, pain, and bewilderment? How fast did Persia, because it's really the Persian emperor or king, take Babylon? Overnight. In a flash. And it was brutal. What were the Babylonians doing just before they got taken? They were partying hardy. For thus the Lord says to me, I'm going to get to where I want to get to. Go station the lookout. Let him report what he sees. When he sees riders, horsemen in pairs, a train of donkeys, a train of camels, let him pay attention, very close attention. Then the lookout called, O Lord, I stand continually by day and on the watchtower, and I am stationed every night at my guard post. And now behold, here comes a troop of riders, horsemen in pairs. The one said, Fallen, fallen is Babylon, and all the images of her good gods are shattered on the ground. O my threshed people, and my afflicted of the threshing floor, what I have heard from the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I make known to you. So what kingdom is about to be conquered? He finally identified it. Babylon. What's approaching in Babylon that's described here? An army. This is an army. This is a big army that's coming. Who are the threshed people? What does the threshing imply? What do you do? What do you do? What's threshing? What do you do? Okay, you thresh wheat. But what are you doing? Separating the good from the bad. Why were the Jews taken into captivity by the Babylonians? To be threshed. To separate the good from the bad. The people who wanted to follow God and the people who wanted to follow idols. So he used the Babylonians to thresh the people. Now the good people that are there are going to be given a chance to go back to Jerusalem. So go back to Daniel. Then Daniel answered. So this is kind of, Daniel's a cyclic book. It goes through all the way to the Persian captivity, through the Babylonian captivity, and it starts over again in the Babylonian captivity and goes through it again. So this is kind of the first time through, and it's at the very end of the Babylonian captivity. Daniel is probably, I don't know, in his 80s, maybe his 90s. And it's at the end of the 70 years, and it's the grandson, it says the son, but it's actually the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. And they're partying, which is what Doug said earlier. Then Daniel answered, and he's seen something, and he says, I don't know what it means. Then Daniel answered, and he says, I'll offer all this to somebody who can tell me what it means. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, keep your gifts for yourself, or give your rewards to someone else. So nobody's been paying attention to Daniel evidently for a while, because the king didn't know who he was. So he comes and says, keep your stuff. However, I will read the inscription to the king and make the interpretation known to him. O king, the Most High God granted sovereignty, grandeur, and majesty to Nebuchadnezzar your father, because of the grandeur which he bestowed on him, all the peoples, nations and men of every language feared and trembled before him. Whomever he wished, he killed. Whomever he wished, he spared alive. Whomever he wished, he elevated, and whomever he wished, he humbled. So, which of the Babylonian kings is Daniel talking to here? The last one. My estimate is Daniel, when he came, he was a young man, maybe 20. It's been 70 years, so he's probably in his 90s. But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit became so proud, he behaved arrogantly. He was deposed from his royal throne, and glory was taken from him. He was also driven away from mankind, and his heart was made like that of beasts, and his dwelling place was with the wild donkeys. He was given grass to eat like cattle, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven, until he recognized the Most High God as ruler over the realm of mankind, and that he sets over it whomever he wishes. So remember this story with Nebuchadnezzar? Yet you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. But you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of the house before you. Now, the vessels of the house, what's that? What are those? That was everything they took out of the temple. All the utensils, all the cups, and everything else that they took out of the temple have been in the royal treasury. Nobody disturbed them. But this chucklehead took them out, and they're all partying with all the utensils of that are in God's temple. And God's not very happy about that. Your wives and your concubines have been drinking wine from them. You have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, of iron, wood, and stone, which do not see, hear, or understand. But the God in whose hand you are your life breath, in all your ways you have not glorified. Then the hand was sent from him, and this inscription is written out. So, what has he not learned? His grandfather had to learn the hard way. Humility. Isn't that what happened to every one of the kingdoms? Arrogance, presumption. Now, this is the inscription that was written out. Many, many tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of the message. Many. God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to it. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found deficiency. Peres. Your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave orders, and they clothed Daniel with purple and put a necklace of gold around his neck, and issued a proclamation concerning him that he now had authority over the third of the kingdom. That same night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was slain. So Darius the Mede received the kingdom at about the age of 62. So the prophecy was made by Isaiah way back. And in Daniel writes about it happening a couple 150 years later, after Isaiah had prophesied about it. So this is where it kind of ties together between Isaiah, and you can see the earlier writings of Isaiah and then the writings of Daniel. What's the famous message we have, or saying that we have, that the message from God is from? If something happens and somebody says, well, they didn't see the handwriting on the wall. That's where it came from. Does Belshazzar have a kind of an interesting reaction? He just got really, really bad news. Right? And he rewards Daniel. What happened to the young Babylonian king? He gets killed. Why were they so arrogant? They forgot God. They thought they did it themselves. This is out of Institute of Biblical Archaeology. I pulled this on. But Herodotus records that Babylon covered 507 square kilometers. It was protected by an outer wall that was 95 meters high, over 300 feet high, and over 87 feet thick. The walls were so thick, even at the top, that chariots could be driven around them. Controlling access through this barrier, this big, huge wall, was 100 bronze gateways. Bronze was tough stuff, and you couldn't knock down that gate. Euphrates went through it. Babylon, just like the Thames goes through London. The outer wall with riverbanks were lined with walled brick, so you couldn't take a boat and get in there and go over those particular walls because there were inner walls. So if you got past the big wall, you had inner walls. So that wall, there was 25 gates, and there was a bridge that was 1,000 yards long and 30 feet wide across the river. And at either end of the bridge was the royal palace. It was more magnificent. The palace was surrounded by 3 walls. The middle wall was 300 feet high, with towers 420 feet in height. So you had huge walls and then more huge walls. So you had to get through 2 huge walls. You can see why they were partying to say, nobody get through these walls. They're 300 feet high. There's no way to get around this. We're safe. 539 BC, Cyrus set out to do the impossible. He wanted to conquer Babylon. His strategy was simple. First, he dug trenches upstream of the Euphrates, diverted the water into a large reservoir. Once the water level had dropped and under the cover of darkness, Persian soldiers slipped into the knee-deep water, marched up the riverbed, and snuck under Babylon's giant gates. So they got past the first wall. How's that strategy? What are the risks? He had God. But what are the risks? The second wall is 300 feet high too. Although the soldiers had infiltrated the outer gates, there was still brass and iron internal gates controlling access out of the riverbed, 300 feet high. If you couldn't get through those gates, the soggy riverbed would have turned the Persians to a tactical advantage into a massive kill box. All the Babylonian soldiers had to do was rain spears and arrows down on them. They'd all be dead. If they could block the Persians' retreat, the Babylonians would kill every last Persian to a man, like shooting fish in a barrel. So, the plan doesn't look so good right now. However, strangely, on the night of the invasion, there were no soldiers, and the internal gates were wide open. King Nabonidus, his son Belshazzar, the imperial guard, the soldiers, and many of the people of Babylon were partying. Consumed with drinking and games, they had failed to close the gates and to station guards. Having quenched the Euphrates and penetrated the outer gates, the Persians, they took it. You think God's hand was in there?
Yeah.
If you want to finish this story next week, you can pick up from there. But you can see God's hand. But that happened so fast to take over Babylon. And it was the end of the Babylonian captivity. And someone who is going to say, I'm going to help you go back to Jerusalem. Thank you for your attention.